The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, along with former Oshkosh Mayor and City Councilwoman Melanie Bloechl. On Tuesday, April 6th, voters in Winnebago County will elect a new judge, or well, it'll be a judge to another term in Branch 5, Winnebago County Courthouse Circuit Branch 5. And seeking that post are incumbent Judge William H. Carver, and also Deputy District Attorney for Winnebago County, John Jorgenson. And we're very pleased to be joined in this first half hour by Attorney John Jorgenson. And in the second half hour of the show, Judge Carver will be here. So thank you very much for being here.
Hey, Cheryl. Thanks for having me, Melanie.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Why don't we just start, John, with your explaining to us a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and why you're seeking a post in Branch 5.
Boy, a lot of questions all
A lot
at
of
once,
questions right off the bat.
Well, let me tell you the most important thing about me. I'm a father of two. I got two young boys, Matthew and Aaron. I live in Oshkosh with my wife, Jenny. She grew up in in Oshkosh. Her maiden name was Jenny Angle. I am from the Fox River Valley all my life. I grew up in Appleton, and my first job out of law school was with the District Attorney's Office, and I've been prosecuting ever since then.
So you've been in the DA's office about 10 years?
Yeah, a little over 10 years.
All right. And this is your first run for judgeship?
It is. Yeah. Judge Carver's seat is up on April 6th. And, you know, for many reasons, which I'm sure we'll talk about next half hour, sure. I thought, you know, now is a right time to make a run for the judgeship. Okay.
Well, I mean, obviously, beating an incumbent is tough business, as I think anyone would tell you. Both Judge Barbara Key, and Judge Carver's terms are expiring. Why Judge Carver's branch? Why are you going for his seat?
Well, there's many reasons, and that really gets to the body of the discussion. You know, when someone decides to make a major life decision, there's many reasons why you do that. You know, my number one reason is I'm ready for my next challenge in my life. Being a judge is a very important position. It's, you know, at the top of the judicial or the justice system, of course. And I felt, based upon my experience, as a prosecutor, and my role dealing with you know, dedicated law enforcement officers, probation agents, victims, social workers, I've gained a lot of insight, and I felt I could use that insight to take it to the next level.
Do you think it's more difficult to run against a woman judge, being a man? Did that play any part in your decision?
It didn't, and this is I didn't answer your question directly. I guess I was going into that why of Judge Carver as opposed to, you know, Judge Key. Initially, I wasn't certain if Judge Carver was going to run for another term. He's been a judge for 30 years, and he was younger than I when first elected. I think he was 35, which makes him 65. So I wasn't certain he was going to run, but I just wanted to make my intentions known early that, you know, I'm interested in his position. I have some ideas for changes in Branch 5, changes that I think will save taxpayers money, but also changes that will better administer justice in the court system.
Okay. Well, it is tough beating an incumbent. Judge Gritton tried twice to beat Judge Carver. He was unable to do it. What do you bring to the table or the bench
Sure.
that makes you feel that you can beat him?
Good. Actually, he only ran against Judge Carver once, 6 years ago, and then he ran for Judge Crane's open seat, and that's how he got elected. What do I bring? I think I bring energy, I bring ideas, I bring dedication. My whole life, I've been committed to public service. I feel strongly that you have to give back to the community in which you live, and I think my history shows that. I've been a mentor as a big brother for 2.5 years. I felt so strongly in this mentorship program. I joined the executive board of the Big Brothers Big Sisters and worked with them for 8 years. But just as importantly, I've been serving my country in the United States Army Reserves. I'm in the JAG unit, the Judge Advocate General. I've been that captain in the JAG unit for the past 8 years. So I think that's what I bring to this, a commitment to the community. I belong to Mid-Morning Kiwanis, and we do great work for children in our community. So I have a lot of exposure. I've learned a lot by these organizations. And I think that's important for a judge, to not just belong to the country club, but be involved with the community. Mm-hmm. You have to be in touch.
You mentioned, John, that you bring energy and ideas. And right. Probably in any other position, those are probably attributes that would be very exciting to most people, politicians and so forth. How does energy and ideas translate into a judgeship? Because aren't you kind of curtailed as to how many new ideas you can bring into the courtroom, to your judges' chambers? Aren't you kind of pigeonholed by state and federal laws? Aren't there certain things that you must do and certain sentencing you must stick to?
Right. That's a good question, and to a certain degree you're right, but let me talk about my ideas, okay. And then you can understand. There are certain things judges can do. As a prosecutor, the beauty is I've been in court in front of 6 judges in Winnebago County. I've been a special prosecutor in Outagamie County, Calumet County, Green Lake County. So you see how other judges do things. And every day of my life I've been in court of making these observations. One change that I would do in Branch 5 is called probation reviews. Now, when people are convicted of a crime, the penalties can range from a fine all the way up to probation, up to jail, to prison, depending on the seriousness of the crime. Some judges in this county, and they got it off of a national program, put people on probation, and you make expectations, orders that they must live up to. They must get counseling, they must pay restitution, they must write a letter of apology. And what some judges have been doing is setting a review date, 3 months down the road. And they tell the probationer, I want to see you in 3 months, and I hope when I see you that you've accomplished some of these goals that I've set for you, these orders. And then they may be imposed and stay some jail time. So that's a huge incentive for these persons on probation to comply with the orders of the probation agent. It's a huge incentive to take serious what they're doing on probation. So what I've seen is defendants come back into court and they give a report to the judge. And the agent may write in a report, they may appear in person. If the person on probation is doing well, the judge will say, hey, good job, keep up the good work. I'm happy, and I may even let you off of probation early. If they're doing so-so, they'll encourage them to do better. If they're doing horrible, but not enough to get revoked, the judge will say, look, you're not doing what I expected. I'm going to put you in jail for 10 days. I'm going to put you in jail for a weekend because I want to motivate you to do better.
Does that, just to follow up on that, because yeah. I don't perceive to know all that goes on, the idiosyncrasies of the law and how much latitude judges have. Thankfully, I haven't had to find out.
Right.
But one of the things that people complain about is the court system being so jammed up. Mm-hmm. It takes forever to get a court date. What happened to justice and moving court cases along and getting things expedited. In order to initiate the ideas that you've talked about, having people being put on probation and then coming back into your court and reporting back to you, will that effectively jam up your courtroom, or are these things that are pretty expeditious and you can fly through them pretty quickly? Help us understand how your court is going to run if indeed you should be elected.
There is plenty of time in a judge's schedule, Melanie, for this type of review. I mean, first of all, it is a very short hearing. It's a 5-minute hearing. They come in, how are things going? Are they doing well? Why not, do better? It is a very short hearing. Some judges do it in Winnebago County. Judge Gritton does it. I think Judge Hawley does it. It's a useful tool, and if you talk to probation agents, they think it's a great idea as well. Justice in Winnebago County, and this is things that we've done well in Winnebago County, move quickly. I mean, some people in other counties are shocked at how fast, especially the DA's office, get cases into court, and they're shocked how quickly they move through our court system. So I don't think that would be an issue, and I think it'd be a good tool. Some other ideas that we were asking me about is I do the same in juvenile cases. When juveniles commit delinquent acts, they're placed on supervision. Same thing, there's certain rules and expectations. I would again hold a review hearing for them. Bring them back. Hey, are you going to school? Are you listening to your parents? Are you getting your high school diploma like I told you to? Are you going to counseling? And again, if they're doing well, you say, good job, way to go. If they're not, you do what you can to encourage them. And again, social workers, by and far, love it. They think it's a great tool to motivate this juvenile. Hey, you're going back, they can tell the juveniles, you're going back to see the judge in a couple of weeks. We got to get this done.
When you do these juvenile reviews, is there parental input? I mean, you're making sure that the parents are part of the system, and because sometimes, unfortunately, parents haven't been part of the solution and can sometimes be a part of the problem. Do you bring parents into the whole solution of this as well? Is that something?
Absolutely. What I've seen, the judges that do this, exactly, turn to the parents. So how has the juvenile been doing at home? Turn to the social worker. How has the juvenile been doing in school through counseling? So absolutely, the parents have to have input.
And I don't want to insinuate that every parent that has a kid that's in trouble, because God knows we've all been there, is a delinquent parent.
Right, absolutely not.
Got a question that was emailed to us, and I'm going to read it because I don't obviously have it memorized.
Sure.
One of the complaints about Judge Gritton is that he
Carver
is...
Or Gritton?
Gritton.
Oh.
Is that he is being substituted on a lot, either by attorneys or defendants who don't want him because of his previous role as deputy DA. Or he is asking to be substituted on because he has moral issues with some of the cases. Either way, he's being paid a very handsome salary, and apparently a lot of other judges are getting a number of his cases. If elected, how would you seek to safeguard against such a problem, and what is your philosophy regarding cases that may come before you that you have a personal, moral, or ethical issue with?
Whenever there's a new judge on bench, many people are very apprehensive in the beginning because they don't know how that judge is going to rule on certain cases. One of the reasons people hire lawyers is because lawyers are familiar with the court system, but they're familiar with the individual judge as well. In the beginning, when Judge Gritton took the bench, a lot of lawyers didn't know how he was going to rule. They didn't want to risk it with their clients, being exposed to sentencing if they didn't know, what does Judge Gritton think about domestic cases? What does Judge Gritton think about sexual assaults? Oftentimes, lawyers know what what judges are more lenient on certain types of cases. I think that might explain one of the reasons why there, at least initially, and I think those numbers have come down, but at least initially, why Judge Gritton was substituted against frequently. As to how I would confront that, I mean, all I can tell you is I'd follow the law and follow the case law and listen to all parties and make a fair and honest decision as best as I could.
Well, that's good to know, John, because really, when I read the question, and of course I think we've heard that from people in the community as well about Judge Gritton, and my feeling is that yes, we all have personal opinions on things, but when you're sitting on that bench and you put that robe on, you have to follow the letter of the law and remove your personal feelings from it. Just as a reporter, when I'm writing a story, I have opinions on everything, I think, as most people know, but I have to make certain that I keep those opinions out of a story that I'm writing. Now, if I'm writing an opinion piece, that's something different. But and so it's good to know that you would do that. You were recently quoted in the paper as saying this is going to be about progressive ideas for handling people in the criminal justice system, progressive ideas for deferring people, and holding people accountable for their actions. Other than the probation reviews, can you give us some sense of what kinds of progressive ideas you have in mind? Are there other ideas that you've got?
Absolutely. And I do feel strongly upon diversionary programs. I think we should do the best that we can to keep first-time nonviolent offenders out of the criminal justice system. They don't belong there. If we can get them the help they need outside of that program. I'll talk about what I'm going to do, but the perfect example that proves that I do feel strongly about that is last year I was involved, I did juvenile prosecution for a while because the juvenile prosecutor was out having a child. And I saw a need there. I saw a need for a diversionary program in the juvenile justice system, and I created a program. When I say I, it's of course it's always a group of people, but I initiated a diversionary program that Winnebago County entered into agreement with Big Brothers Big Sisters so that we could have a fast-track diversionary program for juvenile cases through Big Brothers Big Sisters. So what essentially the agreement reached, my understanding, is that when Department of Social Services sees an at-risk child that could really benefit from a mentor, which I don't know which at-risk child couldn't, but they set up agreement with Big Brothers Big Sisters to get a fast-track mentorship. So that's something I'm proud of, and that's the kind of things I look for, and I'll continue to look for if I'm judge. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, John. Big Brothers Big Sisters, is this not usually an organization that deals with single-parent households?
It does.
Would that be something that only single-parent households, that juveniles are coming into the justice system, that they would be, that program would be available just to the single-parent households? What about the kids that have two parents and they're just, because they're nuts?
Right. I know Big Brothers Big Sisters accepts two-parent households matches because there are situations where maybe the father or the mother is absent, whether physically absent or just for other reasons and not able to connect with that child. So it still would work for two-parent families.
Okay.
Another idea, and I'm trying to
go
answer.
ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Child support contempt hearings. That is a huge issue in our society.
Huge.
One-parent family are struggling enough to raise a child, but then they also have to endure the financial hardship. I feel strongly that once an order for child support's in effect and there's violations, it should come directly to the circuit court for contempt hearings. And let me explain that. Presently the system is it has to go before the court commissioner. And the court commissioner will give that person who's violating the order a hearing and then tell him get a job, or her. They go off, get a job, they come back, they can't. They come up with all the reasons why they can't. They have to come back another month. Well, then finally the court commissioner gets fed up and says, that's it, I'm now sending you to circuit court. Then we're back at square one at circuit court, where the defendant has, not the defendant, I'm sorry, the person not paying support has to be given many more opportunities to make a payment, and eventually then, after giving many more opportunities, they can be held in contempt of court. I think it's a total waste of resources to start the process at the court commissioner level. It should go right to circuit court. That's too long for a mother or father waiting for that money to fool around with at the court commissioner level. Again, there's plenty of time in the court's calendar to fit that in, and anyone that says there's not, I don't think is being truthful.
So I'm sorry. Is that something that you have discretion that you can change, or does you do?
Absolutely. It's
okay,
it's
so
a local.
It's not a state lawmaker
No.
type thing that has
No.
to be changed legislatively or anything like that.
Right.
Okay.
It's a local rule that a judge can handle it however they want.
Okay.
Right.
So you get these deadbeats in your court. What do you do with them? Let's just say that they're just not working, or they have worked and they've piddled the money away. If you throw them in jail, mom or dad still doesn't get any money to support the kids, and they're taking up valuable space in our jail just because they're slugs. So what's the answer here? Where do we get the money from so that these kids can eat and go to school and be clothed?
Boy, if I had to answer that question,
you could run for president.
I could run for president. What a judge has to do is do everything possible to encourage this person to get a job. And the final tool is, okay,
jail.
You're going to sit in jail for 5 days, 10 days, 15 days until you get motivated to get a job. And so it's a fine line you walk, and those are the issues that you balance when you make that decision. What good does it do? But on the flip side, generally jail motivates people to change their behaviors. I mean, that's the whole theory of our criminal justice system.
Well, I think maybe if we made the jails a little less attractive with the TVs and the cushy beds and started breaking rocks in the hot sun again, that might motivate people.
The jails, I don't think, are so cushy. It's the prison system that is a little cushier. Maybe an unpleasant question for you, but it's one that I think has to be asked. A couple years ago, you ran for district attorney, and that was based on the belief that Joe Paulus was not going to run again. Then when he decided to still run, you pulled out of the race, and I think that some people felt a little bit betrayed, like maybe they had wasted their time. you know, supporting you initially. Given that, what would you say to people this time that would, I guess, instill confidence in them that you'll remain in for the
Sure.
long term here?
Sure. Well, I appreciate that there were people supporting me way back then for district attorney. Yeah, you're right. I initially announced I was only out for, I'm not even sure, it was 3 weeks a month.
Yeah, it wasn't very long.
As this community will remember, that was a very ugly period for our criminal justice system and the DA's office in particular. I felt that when Mr. Paulus was staying in, that I did not want to be a party to this election where I could possibly be in there just to split up the votes. I felt that there were some strong issues on both sides. I felt let those parties fight these issues out and let the community make its decision. And I didn't want to be a distraction. I didn't want to be in there just to split up the votes.
Did you lack the collective courage to run against Joe?
Which time? You mean, are you talking this last time?
Exactly. Were you afraid to run against him? Because
okay, go ahead.
You worked for him for a number of years.
Right.
You saw what was going on in the office. You heard what was going on in the office. You knew Joe's personality. You knew what's been going on. You couldn't not know.
Right.
Correct?
Well, wait. What's going on? You have to clarify what's going on.
I think that when you have two new rookie assistant district attorneys who are able to come forward and say, here's what we've been seeing, here's what's been going on, this is what we've learned in this very short period of time that we've been here. John Jorgenson, district attorney, assistant district attorney, is there 9 years. Everything's fine. You never heard anything, never saw anything. And then Joe has some competition by one of the young men who came forward and said, things are stinking up the place in the DA's office, and then you pulled out. Can you, it doesn't, if it doesn't quack like a duck, it usually isn't a duck, John. And my question is, did you really pull out because you didn't want to be a distraction, or you had some real issues running against Joe?
I had no issues whatsoever running against Joe. In fact, you know, and you can interpret this however you want, Joe told me to stay in. So I mean, if I needed the blessing, which I didn't, of Mr. Paulus, he encouraged me to stay in. As to what was going on, to this day, we don't know what was going on. Personally, if you believe the worst, and I guess I don't want to believe it, but if you believe the worst, that there were bribes being given, generally only two people know, the person giving the bribe and the person taking the bribe. You don't advertise that that is going on. If people thought it was so clear that it was going on over those several years, you know, where were the judges? Where were allegedly the defense attorneys that knew this was all going on? And if it was so clear what was going on, why is it taking the FBI 2 years to investigate this, spend their whole life investigating this case, and we're still waiting for their decision?
Well, from what we've heard, you know, publicly and privately, a couple years is not an inordinately long amount of time for a federal investigation. When Judge Hazy was on the show not all that long ago, he said, right in that chair that you're sitting in, that he feels that there probably is something prosecutable there just by virtue of the fact that they've now let Washington, D.C. start handling it. But even if there's nothing illegal there, there was obviously Joe Paulus behaving pretty raunchily, something that is not appropriate behavior for a district attorney. And while some of his activities may not have been illegal, if two guys can see it who have only been there a short period of time, how could you not have seen it? How could anyone in that district attorney's office not have seen it? And what is anyone's excuse, including your own, for not doing something about it?
Again, I would ask, when you say, okay, acting badly, I mean, I can tell you this, you know, of course I don't agree with everything that Mr. Paulus did in his behaviors, at least the stuff that came out publicly. But I mean, we have to clarify. I mean, are you talking about possible illegal activities or just someone acting badly? And if he was just acting badly, I mean, you don't know what type of relationship I have with him.
Well, let's talk about what we do
said.
know. I mean, and our time is winding down. Let's talk about what we do know. The, his activities in the office that he bragged about, then later said it was just locker room talk.
So, I'm sorry,
Were you
your
aware
question of him talking badly?
Yes.
Yeah, I know Mr. Paul's had a mouth.
I think where this is leading, and we'll go real quickly here,
Please,
because
I'd
we
like to get to talk about
get to
my
something
important
about
issues here.
your judge.
Thank you.
think where where we're trying to blend this all in is, if as an assistant district attorney, you see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil about someone that you worked for, as a judge who will stand in judgment of others who are behaving badly, what can we look forward to from you sitting on a bench? If you didn't have the knowledge or the courage, whichever way that is, to do something in the DA's office, will you have the courage and the knowledge to do it on the bench?
I'll answer that question and say absolutely. Okay. And hopefully we can move on then. But there's a difference between someone acting badly and someone doing something illegal. Illegal, I can tell you I did not see it, and I hope it didn't happen. I've heard, since then, I've heard some rumors, as everyone has, but it's that type of stuff that if it was happening, it's not advertised. I mean, who would talk about, if these bad things were taking place, that these allegations are, it's not something that's posted on a bulletin board. So, I hope I answered your question. I forget the second part of it.
No, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, let's move on.
If I could continue on my ideas about other changes and
Go
concerns. Some of the concerns I also, and this goes back to your question way in the beginning about why Judge Carver. Some of the concerns I have in what's going on in Branch 5 is I don't think that Judge Carver has been adequately looking out for victims and their concerns, and I think he's been extremely lenient in the sentencing in criminal cases. If I can tell you this, if I or a family member of mine was a victim of a crime, I would never want to be in Judge Carver's courts. I've heard where I've not been in court, so I cannot say firsthand knowledge, where he's told victims of domestic abuse that they need psychological counseling. Now, it may be true. I mean, a lot of these women go through horrible things, but at a criminal sentencing, the focus is on the defendant, not the victim. And the judge should be looking at the defendant's behaviors and actions and not putting the victim on the spot and telling her she needs psychological help. I've had a sexual assault case where he told, a woman was sexually assaulted by someone she knew but hadn't seen in a year, just showed up. And he told her in open court that you shouldn't be afraid of this abuser. And she felt that was very demeaning, very patronizing, that, why should I was raped. Who is he to tell me I should not be afraid of my abuser? I've had several cases that I have some great concerns with. One was one that took place last year. A man was convicted of sexually assaulting several teenage girls, taking showers with them, but also he admitted, as a read-in, admitted to sexually assaulting a 4-year-old stepdaughter. The girl's statement was that he'd put marshmallow sauce on his privates and have her lick them off. And it was a continual abuse from when she was 4 up until she went through puberty, when it stopped, of full sexual assault. And then he befriended this girl's friends and had sex with them. Great concern. Judge Carver gave him probation and jail, no prison. I had a great concern with it, but I'm not the only one. Northwestern Editorial Board, which I know you don't always agree with.
That's okay.
But they wrote an editorial on January 10th, 2003 that after Judge sentenced him to jail, sadly, on Wednesday, Circuit Court Judge William Carver sent entirely the wrong message when he sentenced a former Oshkosh man to an appallingly lenient jail sentence for repeated sexual abuse of 5 girls, one as young as 4.
John, on that note, I'm sorry, they just gave me the signal here. Our time is up. Why don't you just very quickly look into camera 3 and tell folks why they should vote for you on April 6th.
I'm asking for your vote and support because I've shown a history of dedication to this community. I'll carry that same dedication to Circuit Court, looking for ideas to better protect you and your family. I have ideas. I have cost-saving ideas to the taxpayers, which unfortunately we didn't get into. But hopefully you'll be hearing them throughout the campaign, throughout debates, and when I come and speak to your group. So I ask for your support.
Great. Do you have a contact number or email or something where folks can get a hold of you?
Well, yeah, my home number is 232-3645. I have a P.O. box for my campaign, P.O. Box 1713, Oshkosh 54903.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for being here. I'm sorry the time was so short. It just goes like crazy.
You're right.
John Jorgenson, candidate for Winnebago County Circuit Court Branch 5. Remember, politics is not a spectator sport, so please exercise your constitutional privilege to go vote on April 6th. We're going to take a very short 2-minute break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Judge William Carver, the current sitting judge in Branch 5. We'll be right back.
Good evening. Follow me, please.
Imagine what America would be like today if Martin Luther King never had a dream. Help keep the dream alive. To find out more about the Martin Luther King Memorial in Washington, D.C., call or log on now.
Oshkosh Community Access TV2 is your local sports channel. Follow your favorite Oshkosh teams each week as CATV2 presents the high school game of the week. Besides football and basketball, we feature soccer, gymnastics, swimming, wrestling, and volleyball. Sundays at 8, Mondays at noon, and Wednesdays at 8, CATV2 is the place to be for high school sports. The high school game of the week, here on Oshkosh Community Access TV2.
I want to
have an impact,
make a difference. I want my voice to be heard.
Take matters into your own hands. Smack down your vote for the candidates who represent you and the issues you care about. Make time on Election Day to vote in elections in your community.
Have an impact,
make a difference.
Let your voice be heard.
To learn more about the candidates where you live, contact the League in your state or community through lwv.org.
Smack down your vote on Election Day.
The Friends of Ocad is a nonprofit group that supports Oshkosh Community Access television programming and facilities. The Friends sponsor membership, underwriting, and fundraising projects. Their mission is to provide quality programming, to plan and implement fundraising activities, to develop a supportive membership, and to raise awareness of Ocad. If you would like to become a member and support Oshkosh Community Access Television, buy an Ocad card and enjoy discounts at many local businesses. Thanks for viewing Ocad.
And we're back. Hi again, and welcome back to the second half of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz along with Melanie Bloechl. We just finished meeting challenger John Jorgenson, running for the Winnebago County Circuit Court Branch 5. We are now pleased to be joined by the Honorable Judge William H. Carver, who has served on that bench for 30 years. Thank you very much for being here, Your Honor.
Well, glad to be here.
Does the H stand for holy cow 35 years?
Yeah, it's a long time. That's true, and we don't like to think about it.
Well, before we actually get to the meat of the interview, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're seeking re-election?
Well, of course, about myself, I hope most people know about me one way or another, but I am an Oshkosh man, boy. Started out here, went to grade school, high school, went off to the University of Wisconsin, undergraduate degree in business administration, came back to Oshkosh to work for a couple of years, started a family, and then went back to law school down at the University of Wisconsin. Graduated from law school in the 60s and came back to Oshkosh to start a private practice with another law student of mine, and then matriculated into the district attorney's office as an assistant, part-time, moved to full-time in short order, and eventually ran for district attorney twice, was elected twice, and then been elected about 5 times for the trial court.
And in your 30 years on the bench, how many times have you faced a challenger?
Well, initially I ran against a incumbent judge, so that was a challenge. And then it was just 6 years ago when now Judge Gritton ran against me. That was the first challenge I had in 24 years, really. And then now again this time.
Yeah, I had mistakenly thought that he had run against you twice. For some reason I thought it was twice.
Well, it might have seemed like that, but it wasn't.
Probably to you too, huh?
It was once, and then he did run for a vacancy when Judge Crane retired.
That's
the community always has had a hard time figuring out who's judge and who isn't, and sometimes I'm confused for Judge Crane and vice versa.
Really?
And
Judge Crane?
Well, the names.
Oh,
you know,
oh,
the
I get it.
familiarity
Okay.
and the reporting in the newspaper, or something like that.
Hazy and Hawley are always the ones I
Right.
get goofed up all the time.
Well, and it's always been like that.
Yeah.
And
Oh, and here you
Carver
get
and
two
Crane
C's.
and
Yeah, Carver and Crane.
Hawley and
yeah.
Hazy, that's true.
Well, besides the obvious, you know, you've got a challenger this time around in Mr. Jorgenson. Besides the obvious factor of experience, what qualities and attributes do you bring to the bench?
Well, the big word is experience. I like to think it's important. And I like to look back at the experience. 30 years, there's a lot of it. I recite, I have no idea how many cases I've had, hundreds of thousands. How many trials have I had? Tens of thousands. How many jury trials have I had? Well over 500. I haven't kept count. That's just the courtroom activity. As a circuit judge, we're handling everything, juveniles, civil lawsuits, probate matters that are contested, and then on a sidelight, of course, we do weddings. I counted those up one time, did 600-700 weddings. And of course, unfortunately, we do divorces too. So we're involved in family court, we're involved in juvenile court, and we're involved in criminal court. Experience is important. I learn every day. It's a challenge.
When you talk about experience, Judge, most of us don't have a lot of experience dealing with the court system, and that's probably a good thing. So talking about experience and all these different avenues that you have to delve into as far as legal experience, probate, family court, for someone who has only been a prosecutor, as you were when you started, is that a difficult learning curve to delve into some of these other areas that you may not have had a great deal of experience in?
Well, I was fortunate, actually. We have to go way back. When I ran for judge the first time, we had county judgeships. They were departmentalized. I ran for what was then Branch 3, which was the criminal and traffic court. I was most familiar with that. I was coming out of the district attorney's office. It was a perfect fit for me, experience-wise. They did incorporate, along with that, in the first 6 years that I was in that division, things like civil cases, certain civil litigation, maybe small claims, and juvenile work. I did part of that, filling in for other judges. So to start out, and my first trial experience was in an area that I was quite familiar with. In 1978, they stepped back from the county courts, circuit court system, made all of us circuit judges, and then as that time 5 circuit judges, we were told we either had to rotate from one judgeship to another, in other words, specialty courts, or develop a system where we would do everything. At that point, we went to what we call now the intake system, wherein we all do everything, we all take an equal share and responsibility of the cases, equal numbers. It's our responsibility to reduce those numbers to completed cases. And so I did have a special opportunity at that time to start out in an area that I was quite familiar with.
You just talked about equal share of the cases. That's how it's distributed now. All of the judges, including Judge Gritton, is he getting an equal share of the cases? And the reason that I asked that is because previously when Assistant District Attorney Jorgenson was on, who's going to be running against you, someone had written into us and said one of the reasons that they're very concerned about new judges, new people coming onto the bench is
from the DA's office.
From the DA's office is because they're being substituted on, or in Judge Gritton's case, supposedly he's having some conflicts either morally or ethically with some of the cases before him, and therefore he's not necessarily taking an equal share of the cases. Is that true from your perspective?
Well, we try to equalize it. If there are substitutions for one reason or another, or recusals by judges for one reason or another, they try to fill up that space, so to speak, in Judge Gritton's court. It is a problem. I could relate back when I became a judge. I was a district attorney. Initially, there were some substitutions on me. The same concern that the defense attorneys had then, they have now. Well, what's Judge Carver going to do? Is he going to be tough on this or tough on that? And it took some working into to develop what I look at as trust. Trust in the judge to be fair. All attorneys ask you to do is be fair. Most of the time, they're representing people that are guilty of something. And they're asking and expect the judge to be fair. We don't impose the maximum sentence every time we impose a sentence. We don't impose the minimum either, necessarily. My job, and I think the job of all judges, is to listen to both sides, weigh both sides. Both sides have something to say. And then there's all these other collateral factors that you must consider when we're talking about sentencing. And I can go on indefinitely on that, but it's the protection of the public and the retribution and restitution and all these other factors that go into sentencing. But once attorneys think you'll be fair and listen to them and render a fair and just decision, I have very few requests for substitution. The ones that I have are because maybe there's some familiarity with the defendant, or maybe an attorney feels that he maybe have had the same defendant in before me before,
and you would remember,
and wouldn't want me to get a hold of the same individual again.
Okay. So the accusation of you being lenient in your court, which is something that John Jorgenson has accused you of, you're very lenient and you're not very victim-friendly. You're too lenient in your judgments. What do you have to say to something like that? You're saying fair, he's saying that.
I've said this over and over. This idea of being a judge being a lenient or not a lenient judge, it comes down to fairness. Certainly a judge can go in there and just impose very harsh, cruel, maximum sentences all the time and avoid that label. I don't think that's our job. Our job is to treat you in a fair manner. And you can come to my court convicted of something through a jury trial or through a plea, and you'd like your side to be told. And I have to decide, are you a continuing threat to the community? Are you someone that I would be concerned about living in my own neighborhood? Can we treat this person, this individual, with something other than, say, a long-term prison sentence? Can we handle the problem, so to speak, with supervision in jail and things of that nature? My thought is it's fairness. And that way you get the respect of not only the parties involved, but even the defendants. If a defendant thinks they're, quote, railroaded, and they've appeared before a judge that didn't care, I'm not so sure that rehabilitation is going to work out very well for that individual, whether it's 30 days in jail or 30 years in jail. They have to consider and feel that the system was fair. Most of them know, a lot of them know when they're coming in, they're going to jail.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And victims, I put something in my flyer, all of you will probably receive it, I mail out thousands of them. And one of the little paragraphs in there is way back in 1976, I think it was. I wrote to the probation parole department. I said in the pre-sentences, which we get about an individual after they're convicted, that I want to hear from the victims. I want the writer of the pre-sentence to contact the victims. That's all I asked for in 76. Contact them. I want to know how they feel. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to sentence like the victim wants. because I know that if it was my house that was burglarized, torn up, and trashed, I'd be thinking about, let's give this individual
350 years or a hot poker in the eye.
Absolutely, absolutely. And but I do want to know their feelings. And now it's a law, and they can come into court, and many times they are quite upset. Sometimes, and it's surprising, they're very understanding. Many times I read recommendations from victims that say, well, Judge, I realize, this and that happened. Just as an example, it's a young person. I don't think he needs to go to prison. I hope you order restitution. I'd like to get my damages paid. I'd like to see that the person gets some counseling. There's many things that they recommend. There's a great deal of interesting responses that victims say to the court. And I've always felt that it's important. And it's worked out very well for me over the years.
In the past, Judge, you've been a proponent of reducing our prison population by sending less people to prison, having shorter sentences, and even granting earlier parole. And now, of course, instead of parole, we've got truth in sentencing. Do you still stand by what you said a number of years ago? And what, in your opinion, is the answer to prison overcrowding?
Well, that's it. There isn't any other way to go. Now, I was asked, I don't know how you got that, but that was a letter I wrote to Carol at the time. It's Wrestler, but at the time it was Carol Bittner. But she wrote all the judges, and I got this letter, how can we reduce prison population of the costs? And I wrote it back. There's only 3 ways to do it. You send less there. Those that you send there, you send for shorter periods of time. And those that are there, you potentially let out early, if they fit the profile of an individual that you can look at those possibilities. I says, those are the key things. Now, I'm not suggesting you do that for everybody. It's only a person that fits the appropriate profile. And there's been a struggle on this for many, many years, and I've watched it. I've had 30 years to watch this. When I started out, we had basically 2 prisons, one in Waupun, one in Green Bay for adults. They weren't even full. And I visited them. I went through them. I was amazed at what I found there as far as who the defendants were. Nowadays, you know how many we got. And I wrote her in that same letter when I said these things, there were about 8,000 or 9,000 incarcerated in a state prison when I wrote that letter. And I wrote in the letter, you can expect in the next few years to have over 20,000. Now she came back with another letter. I sent the letter from 5 years ago back to her. I said,
you still haven't done anything. Yeah.
Well, I know it. And I also said in there, I laid the blame on this, if you want to call blame, on everybody. I included everybody. And they're all an actor in this, from legislators to news media. You can all think about this. To judges, to prosecutors. And I said, we're all playing a part in this of just exploding the prison population. It's extremely expensive. It's something like $24,000 a year to incarcerate somebody. It's much less if they're on probation. And there were some alternatives that they tried. I was on the committee that they had intensive sanctions. It was one, and I think maybe Senator Ressler was involved in that, in developing the legislation for it. Very interesting program. The idea was to get people out early, under intense supervision, and with no appeals. If they wanted to revoke them, they could immediately bring them back to prison, so on and so forth. Well, all kinds of things happened. They put the money in, and it included cash to treat the individuals, counseling. Well, then they got concerned about it. It's a long story, but they didn't want to release those people that needed counseling, is what it amounted to. They just referred to some people that committed property crimes. It wasn't working. A few they let out that needed drug treatment went out and committed more drug crimes. And so they just dispensed the whole system. And so there's a tremendous amount of dynamics involved in this. I just laid out what they have to do. But everything that's been done in the last 10 years has gone toward increasing the prison population. And I said in my final thought to the legislator, I says, we have to think, quote, out of the box. We have to come up with something new. I don't think I've got all the answers. I'm willing to discuss things. We look at a person that we send to prison. A certain percentage of them, once they go there and they're released, will not commit another crime. Another percent you send to prison, they get out and they commit more crimes. The answer has been, in the last 10 years, send them all there for a long period of time and don't let anybody out. That way, we now have in custody all those that we think will commit another crime. But what's unfortunate, you're holding that other large percentage of people that are in prison, once released, don't commit more crimes. And that's expensive to keep those people there. I'm not suggesting they didn't commit a crime to get there. We have no way of knowing when we look at somebody if they're going to commit another crime. I have no way of knowing. All I can go back is the history. How many crimes have they committed in the past? Right. Is this thing getting worse and worse and worse and more dangerous, more egregious, and then of course the sentences are longer.
Speaking of truth in sentencing, I had mentioned that a few minutes ago, and you know, I'm very confused by truth in sentencing because when it was put into place, parole was done away with, and yet truth in sentencing, a combination of prison time combined with extended supervision, that to me anyway seems the same as parole, basically. It just sounds like maybe the legislators have come up with some feel-good legislation, let's call it a different thing and make people feel good. Is there truly a difference, or is it one and the same?
You're probably pretty close. I don't see where it's any different. It's helpful, and this is getting technical, it's helpful to me as a judge when you're only dealing with one count and it's an egregious enough offense that you want to send them to prison and you want that control when they get out. That's somewhat helpful. But we've always had parole before, and some people know that you put people on parole, some of them don't make it. They commit more offenses. These same people that are on an extended supervision, they call it, it's like parole, and if they don't make it, they can get them back faster. But I don't know that we could have accomplished that with some other legislation. No, I don't think it's going to change anything. The idea was to cut down on the prison population.
Scare them straight, so to speak?
No, the idea was to follow what I've been talking about. And it was determinate, and we would potentially have judges imposing a shorter sentence. That was the idea. They thought that judges would be shorter in their sentencing, and it hasn't.
Well, if you went back to the probation parole thing, rather than the truth in sentencing, would you need more probation parole officers in your way of thinking? Because if we're not putting them in prison where they have direct supervision, now that we have all these huge prisons built, do we now have to hire more probation and parole officers to track these people, to make sure that somebody's actually following up and stuff? Or?
I don't know about whether you need more or not. Generally, we've never gone through anything where we've needed less of anything.
Isn't that the truth?
We always need more.
We always need more.
We need more judges.
Yes.
We need more police officers. We need more of everything. And all of this is very, very expensive. $1 billion a year on this correctional system. One only has to sit back and think, where could we be using, say, half of that on some other social necessities.
Sure. Judge, about 10 years ago, you were disciplined for a comment that you had made from the bench about a case that had come before you. If memory serves me correctly, you didn't actually hear that case, but you had made a comment from the bench, and I believe it was an illegal gambling case. Politics being what it is, I am assuming that will probably come up during this campaign. What would you say to voters in Winnebago County about that if it does come up?
Well, it had to do with a comment made by myself in court, on the record, that some people felt was inappropriate. I did not handle the case. I recused myself from the case immediately. A few hours after I received a letter from the defendant, who I was going to recuse myself for anyway. There was a number of collateral issues involved in that I was very upset with. And I put some of them on the record. It's always interesting if you want to go back, read the transcript. And I was disciplined for it, and probably rightly so. I guess I shouldn't have said those things that I did say, but I felt some people had it coming. And so I've taken my punishment. I guess maybe I've learned my lesson in a sense that I haven't done that since.
So it does happen. You do learn at some point.
Yes, you're never too old to learn. And
but you're a human being. And,
yes,
and even as a judge, you still have those human emotions that you get worked up.
I had a lot of emotions in that. I was being accused of things I didn't do, and it's left probably its mark on a lot of people in the community. Think I'm involved somewhere, was involved in some kind of gambling operation, and it was proved conclusively that I wasn't. Had nothing to do with it. Didn't participate in gambling. Didn't make bets on my own. Any of this stuff. I was given a clean bill on all that, and they finally said, well then, you shouldn't have said what you said in the courtroom. Okay, fine. The Supreme Court said that I did wrong. I respect the Supreme Court. I respected their judgment. I respected their discipline, and I went on from there. I don't know that it's an issue in this election. It was an issue in the last election. Somehow we survived that, and I don't think we need to, if we get into it, I don't mind talking about it.
I've been disciplined a lot in my life, Judge. Unfortunately, never as high up as the Supreme Court, although I do believe that there would probably be people in the community that would push it right along there if I could.
Oh, sure. And when you're in public office, or as of today, if you're a football coach, sometimes you say things when you're emotionally upset.
Well, and when you're being attacked, too.
Right. And as we know, some football coach might lose his job tomorrow. I don't know if that's part of it, but that's where Bill Carver was. I was upset and probably said something wrong, but believe me, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't commit any criminal offense. I didn't participate in any criminal activity. If I had, I wouldn't be here today.
Judge, we only have about 40 seconds or so left. In that amount of time, why don't you take about 30 seconds or so and look into camera 3 and tell folks why they should vote for you for Circuit Court Branch 5 on Tuesday, April 6th.
Experience, efficiency, credibility, trust. I think these are some important issues. You didn't ask me to discuss some of those. Maybe you asked Mr. Jorgenson, but I would say vote for Bill Carver because you can trust him.
All right, wonderful. And do you have some contact information that you'd like to give out to the public in case they'd like to get a hold of you?
Oh, just call me at home. Here.
All right.
Tells you all about me.
And your phone number is on here?
No.
Okay.
It's in the book.
All right.
I'm one of those judges that puts my phone number in the book.
All righty, good enough. And of course, we want to remind everyone to go to the polls on Tuesday, April 6th. Exercise your constitutional privilege to vote for your candidate of choice. Thank you very much for being here, Judge. We appreciate it very much. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Until then, keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh. Take care.